abducted and tortured by mainland Chinese agents. Hong Kong economy grows even more in the second quarter. And Trump says his fiery rhetoric wasn't tough enough on North Korea.
Good evening. Democratic Party activist Howard Lam has claimed he was abducted, beaten up and dumped onto a beach by mainland forces because of attempts to reach out to late dissident Liu Xiaobo's wife. As Wina Wong reports, his fellow party members have demanded the police launch a full investigation.
Howard Lam showed his injuries in an emergency press conference this morning. He claims his attackers put staples in his legs and stomach and beat him up. Lam says it all began 3 days ago. He received a phone call from someone speaking Putonghua. The caller warned him not to give footballer Lionel Messi's signed photo to Liu Xia, otherwise he would face consequences. Liu Xia is the wife of mainland dissident Liu Xiaobo, who recently died of cancer. Liu Xiaobo was known to be a fan of Messi. Then yesterday, Lam said he was in Portland Street in Mongkok when two men, again speaking Putonghua, approached him and bundled him into a vehicle. Lam said they gave him something to smell and he became unconscious. The next thing he knew, he was being beat up in an unknown location. He claims his attackers spoke to him in a northern accent and asked him whether he knows Liu Xia. Lam said he did not. Then they asked him why he was being so nosy and that they knew he had Messi's signed photo. They also asked him if he knew what it meant to love the country and whether he was a Christian. That was when they began stapling crosses onto his body. According to Lam, they also told him even if he informed local police, they would not be able to help him because it's an issue to do with the country. Finally, Lam was made unconscious again. He woke up on a beach in Sai Kung early this morning. Although his attackers never identified themselves, Lam claims they gave off the impression of being mainland forces.
This is giving me a very worry about that because I don't think Hong Kong still have the freedom, no matter their identity, whether they are from mainland authority or not. I urge the Hong Kong government to conduct a thorough investigation.
This afternoon, the police chief vowed to take the case seriously.
This is a very serious allegation, and I urge any citizen, if they really have these sort of things happen on themselves, they should make a report to police immediately.
He reiterated that foreign law enforcement operating in Hong Kong will never be tolerated. Officers could be seen in Yau Ma Tei later today. A shopkeeper there apparently confirmed that Lam had been to the store yesterday. Wina Wong, TVB News.
Well, in other news, Hong Kong's GDP growth forecast for 2017 has been revised upwards to between 3% and 4%. That's after the local economy managed to sustain growth in the second quarter this year. Elmi Leung reports.
Hong Kong's economy in the second quarter grew by 3.8% year-on-year. Even though that's slightly down from the 4.3% recorded in the first quarter, the government says it's still stronger than the trend growth. Officials revised this year's GDP forecast upwards to 3 to 4% from the previous 2 to 3%. That's on the assumption geopolitical tensions would not escalate.
Geopolitical tension in the world have been lingering on for quite a long time, right? We see geopolitical tensions in Middle East, in Eastern Europe, and lately in Asia itself. We assume that, of course, this geopolitical tension will not materialize into a kind of severe conflict between countries.
Some good news on the trade front, though. The total exports of goods grew by 5.6% in the latest quarter. A key growth driver was exports to Asian economies such as the mainland, India and Vietnam. Economists also said the overall labour market conditions remain favourable, with the second quarter unemployment rate down to 3.1% the lowest in more than 3 years. Despite a slight increase in wages, it might still be difficult to get on the property ladder. Overall flat prices in June were 94% higher when compared to the peak in 1997. The housing affordability ratio, though, worsened to around 67%. Elmi Long, TVB News.
On the mainland now, at least 36 people are dead after a long-distance passenger bus ploughed into the wall of an expressway tunnel in Shanxi province. The crash happened just before midnight last night. Reports say 13 other people were injured and rushed to hospital. The coach was travelling from the city of Chengdu in Luoyang City in central Henan province. It's not clear if other vehicles were involved in the accident, and there's no word on weather conditions at the time of the crash. An investigation is underway.
Overseas now, and U.S. President Donald Trump is doubling down on earlier remarks regarding North Korea's threats against the U.S. territory of Guam, which is home to a major American military base. The latest warning comes after North Korea promised to have plans in place in less than a week to send a volley of intermediate-range ballistic missiles towards the Pacific island. Amid threats by the North Korean leadership to fire off more missiles, the U.S. president continues to fire off threats of his own.
Let's see what he does with Guam. He does something in Guam, it will be an event the likes of which nobody's seen before, what will happen in North Korea.
At a security briefing with top advisors, Trump sounded off on a variety of topics, including nuclear weapons. He said he's planning to add billions of dollars to the nation's anti-missile programs, adding he'd rather de-nuke the world.
And until such time as this scourge disappears, we will be so much better and so much stronger than anybody else. And nobody, including North Korea, is going to be threatening us with anything.
Trump also suggested he was too mild when he vowed to unleash fire and fury on North Korea if it continued to threaten the U.S.
If anything, maybe that statement wasn't tough enough.
U.S. allies, Japan and South Korea, have also promised a strong reaction. While much of the North's actual firepower and capabilities remain unknown, experts say there are also plenty of knowns.
We think they have at least 16 to 20 nuclear weapons, perhaps even more. Recent leaked intelligence assessment suggests that maybe 60 is what the U.S. Community is thinking.
Defense Secretary Jim Mattis says his responsibility is to have military options, but he stressed the U.S. effort remains focused on working with allies for a diplomatic solution. After repeated weapons testing by North Korea, the UN Security Council imposed fresh sanctions that aim to slash the country's export revenue by a third. Meanwhile, U.S. and South Korean military officials plan to move ahead with annual large-scale exercises later this month. North Korea claims are a rehearsal for war.
Well, meanwhile, the tensions between the US and North Korea sent stock markets worldwide tumbling. Asian shares followed a drop on Wall Street, sending investors to safe haven investments such as gold. Alan Buckner reports.
In South Korea, Donald Trump's bellicose remarks on North Korea sent the Kospi down 1.7%. as investors unloaded shares in companies that have been on the rise in recent months. Stocks in Taiwan, Singapore, and other Asian countries were also lower. Japan was closed for a holiday. Here in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index shed 2% to close at 26,883. The 2.5% loss for the week was the HSI's worst performance of the year. Mainland stocks also stumbled over the spat between Pyongyang and Washington, along with profit-taking in some sectors. The Shanghai Composite registered its sharpest drop this year, slumping 1.6% to finish at 3,209. All this followed a 204-point decline on the Dow overnight to 21,844, the biggest single-day drop in 3 months.
I think what's affecting the market today, first off, is the heated rhetoric between the U.S. and North Korea, the uncertainty surrounding just how far North Korea is willing to take this threat.
Some analysts, however, think the markets were due for a correction, and investors are using the North Korean issue as an excuse for profit-taking.
Just a little bit of jitters about that, and you know, it seems that the markets had a great run up, and you know, individual clients that I'm talking to, they're all looking for, is there potential decline here? So I think it's just a little bit of jitters, but unfounded jitters.
What's viewed as safe haven assets were the big winners. Gold continued to glitter, hitting a 2-year high of $1,290 an ounce. And the Japanese yen strengthened to an 8-week high of about 109 to the US dollar. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
China is expressing strong dissatisfaction with the United States over its Navy's latest freedom of navigation foray into the South China Sea. A U.S. Navy warship sailed past Mischief Reef, where China has been building man-made islands with 3 runways and a missile defense system. Parts of the area are also claimed by the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. The U.S. said its military will continue to sail, fly, and operate wherever it's permitted by international law. Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang said the U.S. move severely undermines China's sovereignty and security and endangers the safety of frontline personnel of both sides. Geng said that the Chinese Navy identified the U.S. warship, warned it, and expelled it.
A strong earthquake struck the northern Philippines today. While it caused no apparent damage, it sent people fleeing into the streets in the capital, Manila. The 6.3 magnitude earthquake struck at a depth of 160 kilometers, 65 kilometers southwest of Manila. Experts say the deeper epicenters cause less damage at the Earth's surface, but are more widely felt. The Philippines is hit with frequent earthquakes because it's on a geologically active Pacific Ring of Fire. And still to come on tonight's news. Disputes over presidential election rage on in Kenya. Mainland authorities in new crackdown on social media firms. And an upset in the men's 200 meters at World Athletics Championships.
Welcome back to TVB News. Overseas again, and in Kenya, a mix of violent protests and celebrations have broken out over a still disputed presidential election. The latest results show the incumbent president as the winner, but the opposition insists their candidate won because the election was hacked. Sonia Artero reports.
Jubilation from opposition supporters after an official announced their candidate, Raila Odinga, had secured victory.
Raila Amolo Odinga, 8,041,726 votes. Uhuru Kenyatta, 7,755,428 votes.
Even Kenya's newspapers all led with the claim that Odinga should be declared the new president. But that contradicts official results from Kenya's Election Commission. It says the count from 99% of polling stations shows President Uhuru Kenyatta won 54.2% of the vote, ahead of Odinga at 44.9%. Odinga, a former prime minister who has run unsuccessfully for president 3 times before, said hackers infiltrated the commission's computer system and manipulated results in favor of Kenyatta. This election official admitted a hacking attempt was made but failed.
The preliminary report shows that no hacking was attempted but did not succeed.
News of a hack attack and rigged voting triggered violence in the streets of the capital, Nairobi. In the western city of Kisumu, police fired off live rounds, tear gas, and water cannon to disperse stone-throwing opposition supporters. At least 3 people were killed amid the clashes. Such violence had international observers like former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry calling for calm and insisting they didn't see any sign of a tainted election.
We affirm with conviction that the judicial process, the judicial system of Kenya, and the election laws themselves make full and adequate provision for accountability in this election. The streets do not.
As residents wait on bated breath for the final results, protesters warn there could be a repeat of the clashes that killed about 1,200 people after a bitterly contested election in 2007.
If we read a wrong result, then he will ban the nation. If they don't want to see what happened in 2007, may Chebukati come up with the correct result.
Sonia Artero, TVB News.
A Canadian diplomat says he too suffers from hearing loss as part of a mysterious acoustic attack American embassy workers in Cuba are complaining about. The Canadian government says it's working with US and Cuban authorities to investigate what caused the unexplained loss of hearing. Experts believe it could have been a surveillance device placed either in or out of the diplomat's Cuba government-owned residences. The US State Department refused to put the blame solely on the Cuban government until the probe is completed. But critics blame Russia, where there's been a surge of eavesdropping on US diplomats in recent years.
Well, closer to home, and some of the mainland's top social media firms are being investigated for alleged violations of cybersecurity laws. It's believed authorities want to intensify scrutiny of the Internet before the National Congress of the Communist Party later this fall. Rachel Lung with more.
Those involved are the most well-known social media sites on the mainland. Tencent Holdings Group Limited's messaging application WeChat, seen as Twitter-like Weibo, and Baidu Tieba's forum sites. In a statement, the Cyberspace Administration of China said these sites have failed to comply with laws that ban contents deemed obscene or offensive to the Communist Party. The administration revealed that it is investigating Weibo, WeChat, and Baidu Tieba after tip-offs were received from users over suspected violations. There are accusations internet users were using these platforms to spread violence, terror, false rumors, and pornography that endanger national security, public security, and social order. And the sites had failed to police such contents. The administration added it will continue to strengthen supervision of internet contents and enforcement of the law. Just last month, the regulator met with representatives of these tech firms, urging them to clean and rectify any illicit contents on their sites. As a result, thousands of accounts that had reportedly breached cybersecurity laws were shut down on Weibo, WeChat, and Baidu. And more than 118,000 messages were deleted. Among them, many were news accounts. Analysts believe that the latest series of regulatory actions shows Beijing is adopting a more hardened stance on censorship ahead of the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party, which is expected to take place in the fall. Rachel Lang, TVB News.
Back locally, health officers were in Mongkok to carry out anti-mosquito measures after 2 residents there became infected with dengue fever. Under the watchful eye of health officials, Food and Environmental Hygiene Department workers got rid of stagnant pools of water and sprayed insecticide in alleys. Under-Secretary for Food and Health Choi Tak-yi said the government was concerned about the infections and that its primary mission was to prevent further cases of the mosquito-borne disease in Hong Kong. He added that officials would focus on raising public awareness, including on the best ways to eliminate mosquito breeding sites in their homes and neighbourhoods. All right, you've got some exciting sporting action tonight, I guess.
And a theme in our sports today. The theme would be upsets.